Hi everyone, welcome to level 5A. So we've pretty much finished levels 1 to 4 and now we're on level 5, which is really introducing SQL as I explained in the previous video. But I thought rather than just jumping into SQL, what we might do is have a look at forms, which are really important in terms of sending information to and fro from the back end. Now, because we haven't used the back end before, we probably, or you guys probably haven't had much experience with forms. You haven't need to use them. And if you've had a button on a website or something like that, you'd probably just put the button straight there without bothering about the form. But now that we've got a back end, we need a form because it helps us say how we're going to transmit our information to the back end. Now, I thought instead of just trying to adapt what we've done so far in steps 1 to 4, I thought I would just start again and I would create an even simpler model than the already simple static screen that we started with. I would simply have one field and that I would do a series of videos in which we would take that single field and transmit it and I guess append it to an SQL database. And so for this forms video, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use a really simple site here. I haven't bothered copying level 4 across like we have in the previous levels. I've started afresh and I haven't worried about a PWA. I haven't worried about, I've taken all the complexity out I can. There's no styling anything. It's just the bare bones the bare bones that you need for a Flask application. In this instance, I've got my root directory, then I've got a templates folder, which you need. I've got my index.html in templates, and I've got app.py, and that is it. So just 4 files. And in the index.html, you can see it's very small. Just got a heading. I've got this form. It's got a label, an input, and a button. That's it. And then in my app.py, I've got very little. I've got a couple of extra things that we're going to go over, but that's all we've got. I don't have anything to do with SQL because at this stage we're just looking at how form works, not how SQL works with it. So, pardon me. I might start with index.html. So you can see with index.html that you wrap everything in the form in these form tags. And inside here, what we're really interested in is the method. That's really the critical thing. And it says post. Now, there's a couple of ways you can communicate with the back end for sending data. One is post and one is put. Basically, they're both HTML methods that we can use. There's quite a few HTML methods. I'll just put them up on the screen. That one, this one here. So you can see there's get, head, option, trace. There's a whole bunch of them, but basically what you're going to see mainly is get, put, and post. And for our application, we won't even use put. So you're just going to see get and post, okay? And so post is what we use to send from the front end information to the back end. Okay, so that's all relatively straightforward. You can see that I don't even have a script here at all, right? So it's just type submit, pardon me, and method post, and that's it. And all the rest is handled by Flask itself. If we have a look at Flask now, the critical thing to have a look for is down here to start with. And you can see what we've got is we've got some stuff about data. We don't really understand that, blah, blah, blah. And we do understand this because we've done it before. We've done a render template before. The other thing that's new is get and post. And that's saying that for this route, for home or slash, we can only do get and post. Now, this is pretty important, and it's directly linked to last term's work on security in applications, okay, secure applications. And you should really have a look at this and maybe memorize it as an example of how we can secure our applications. So as I mentioned before, there are many different types of transactions, HTML transactions, they called transactions? They're called request methods, okay. So there are many different types of HTML request methods that you can use. So yeah, these are the many options that you can have, and we've chosen to only look at get and post. And what it means is if any of those other options are tried, this Flask will reject them. So we can only get and post. Now this is important for secure architect. What do they call it? They call it secure software architecture. So secure software architecture. It's important because one way of securing your application is to only really allocate them the bare minimum requirements that are required to perform a task. Don't give extra requirements. And this is what ChatGPT actually said on the subject. It's a bit of an interesting read, so it might be worthwhile you asking the same question. Literally, I asked ChatGPT, how does this statement relate to secure software architecture? And it gave me quite a nice answer. So it's worthwhile you reviewing that and tying it to your previous term's work on secure software architecture. Okay, so getting back to our code. So I might just make this a bit bigger actually. Can I make it a bit bigger? Yes, I can. I definitely can. So I'll make it a bit bigger. All right, so there's a couple of things. So some of it you should be starting to get familiar with. So all of this is the same as before. This is the same, this is the same, this is the same, and this is the same. So really, it's this stuff that is new. And we've had a bit of a chat about this, about this. So really, it's data equals request form dot get. So what's happening there is once the user presses submit, then this, and this line all snap into action. So the first thing it does is it takes all the information off the form and then it puts it into data. At this point, I think maybe it's worthwhile having a look at what the form will look like. So you can see that this is the form we're aiming at, right? So all we can do is type in here, we can type something in, we can press submit, and then we want that to go to the back end. So that's a theory. So when we press submit, the information is going to come up. The critical thing here is name of data, and it's also interesting that it's required. In other words, you can't submit something without information there. Now, keep in mind that in subsequent videos, we're going to talk about some of the security implications of how we're doing things, and actually we'll change things around a little bit. At the moment, I'm trying to keep the very simplest model we can, just so that the code's as simple as possible. But do keep in mind that we want to protect ourselves from future SQL injection code sort of attacks and things like that. So we will actually change a little bit of this, but this is probably the most basic way that you can do something where you can have a form and then submit information. So just keep that in mind for future videos. All right, so what we've got here is basically in our app here, we've got our data, which is the variable that's going to contain the data from the form is getting loaded up, and then we're actually running the method insert data, right? And that's passing that information from the form. So that's how the information from the form is traveling from here into this function. Now this function, well, at the moment it's just got a print statement. It will obviously be modified in the future. So this is where we'll actually put the SQL code to insert this data into an existing table, okay? But for the time being, for debugging purposes, we've just got a print statement. So if we run this now, we might, what we might do is we might, oh, we've got this, okay, very good. Actually, what we might do is I'll right click here and open integrated folder. So just out of interest, what I did there is I did a right click and open integrated folder on a file that is in the folder that we want. And the reason that it will open to the correct folder, in this case actually I went to templates, which is wrong, is that I've got in my root directory, I've got a folder called .vscode, and in .vscode, I've got a file called settings.json, and that has a couple of lines of code, these lines of code, that make that possible. It'll default to a Git, a bash type shell, and it will go to your folder that of the file that you're clicking on. So it may be interesting if you're interested in trying that. That's how you do that. All right, I'll close that up, and I will actually go back one. So I'll actually go here. Okay, so I'm in 5a forms, so I can go Python py.app, and it's failing. Why is it failing? I go ls. I might shrink this down a bit. It's a little bit hard to use. App.py. What did I type? Py.app. Okay, app.py. Okay, that's looking better. And I'm just going to control click. That is going to bring that up on a window, which it does. On a tab, sorry, which it does. And now maybe what I want to do is I will have a look at it. Yep, okay, so what I've got now is I've got both screens displayed. I'm going to just type in some data. This is the test data, and then submit that. And you'll actually see that a couple of lines come up here. So we'll have a closer look at those. So these lines here, let me zoom in a little bit. Okay, so these lines here, you've got the data is the test data. So that is coming from here. The data is, and then the test data. Okay, so the test data is what we actually submitted. And then you've got UR and insert data. And this is the test data. Okay, so that's coming from this print here. So this is giving you a couple of ways that you can debug your code as well. Okay, so having these prints there, they're going to come up here, so you can sort of tell what's going on. So that's all I wanted to say about forms. I want to keep this relatively brief. It's already gotten a bit longer than I'd hoped for. But yeah, I would encourage you to get this working. The code is up here. It is, you can just copy and paste the two files in, okay, run it with the app.py Python, and it should work for you, and you can just experiment a little bit. A couple of other things you could probably do is you could Shift Control I, just have a look at what happens, various spots here, what's going on. You can have a look at application as well, so on and so forth, that sort of thing. In the next video, what we're going to look at is we're actually going to create our SQL database. We're going to put a table in it, and we're going to use the command line to do those things. So look forward to seeing you in the next video. Bye for now.